1 Corinthians 11, Headship and the Lord's Supper. The chapter begins with Paul urging the Corinthians to imitate him, as he imitates Christ. He affirms the order of authority, starting with God, then Christ, and then the man. He says that man did not come from the woman, but that the woman came from man. This refers back to Genesis chapter 1. But, he goes on to say that man and woman are not independent of each other. Paul says that men should not have their head covered, and that it is a dishonor for men to have long hair. He explains women should have long hair, which God has given them, as it is a symbol of submission and modesty. When women do this, they bring honor to their husband who is their head. Exegesis by sections and verses. Introduction, verses 1 to 3. In these verses, Paul encourages the Corinthians to imitate him, as he imitates Christ. He establishes the order of authority, stating that God is the head of Christ, Christ is the head of man, and the man is the head of the woman. Man's head should be uncovered, and the woman's head should be covered, verses 4 to 16. Paul addresses the issue of head coverings, particularly during times of prayer and prophesying. He argues that men should not cover their heads, as they are the image and glory of God. On the other hand, women should have long hair as a covering, as it is a symbol of submission to the authority of her husband. God has given her to have long hair to be a covering. The Lord's Supper, verses 17 to 34. Paul rebukes the Corinthians for their improper conduct during the Lord's Supper. He condemns the divisions and factions that have arisen among them, emphasizing that the purpose of the Lord's Supper is to proclaim the Lord's death until he comes. Paul reminds them of the seriousness of partaking the Lord's Supper in an unworthy manner, which includes selfishness, drunkenness, and lack of discernment. He instructs the Corinthians to examine themselves before participating in the Lord's Supper. He says that if they fail to do this, they are drinking condemnation to themselves. Overall summary: 1 Corinthians chapter 11 covers two primary topics, headship coverings and the Lord's Supper. Paul addresses the issue of headship, highlighting the importance of submission and modesty. He emphasizes the order of authority that was established by God, stating that men and women have distinct roles within the marriage. He also addresses proper and improper behavior during the Lord's Supper, urging them to examine themselves.